All
No,
right. I think we're alive. Mark, so excited about this conversation. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for the invitation.
Likewise, thank you for accepting. Well, for those that have joined us and have no idea who you and I are, let's do quick intros and then we can get right into it. Do
Should I
you want
start
to
off?
kick us off, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marc Ramos, and I've been in the learning tech business and world for 20 plus years, and really excited to join Tigran and the DeepSeek team. I'm sorry, the Code Signal team. My gosh, I guess
No
I guess we
worries.
all had one very interesting topic on our head. The Code
we should
Signal
we
team.
should talk about DeepSeek, by the way.
It was
That's a
just as
hot topic.
powerful as the DeepSeek team. But anyway, really glad to be here.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm Tigran Slan. I'm the founder and CEO of Code Signal. If you haven't heard about us, we are on a mission to discover and develop the skills that will shape the future. We use hands-on simulations to both assess and let people practice their skills to really close organizational skills gaps, especially in an age of AI, because skills gaps are only getting wider as technology advances faster and faster with products like DeepSeek. So uh, let's start there. I feel like that's like top of mind, and you brought it up anyways. So I know you've been looking at it. What's your take on it? Why is everybody freaking out?
Oh boy, this could be our entire 45 or 43 minutes. I
All
think
right.
for me, um, I mean, you and I, Tigran, and so many people on this call, most likely, we've been inundated both on the awe side, AWE, we're in awe of what's happening on the AI front, and then a little bit on, I'm not going to say the frightened side, but it's a heck of a lot of healthy skepticism, and then everything in the middle. So I think from that middle perspective, the thing that I think about most is just two things. One is this is so revolutionary in terms of the amount of resources and effort that it took to build something that is at the same complementary level as the other frontier LLMs out there, whether it's Gemini, whether it's ChatGPT 4.0, et cetera, Claude. So that's just one thing. It's just really interesting in terms of how quickly this has been able to be produced. I do have a big question mark over that because we do need to be really clear that the information that we're receiving in terms of how it was actually built is valid. But that's
Mhm.
topic number one. And then topic number two is kind of at the macro kind of business level. You know, we've got certain chip companies that have lost over 600 billion in one day. Hint, hint. And then we've got others that have been impacted. So I think of that broader perspective. The thing that I think about most is, are we truly behind the innovation curve,
Mhm.
or actually we're right on par of the innovation curve, but something is kind of getting in the way of being truly innovative and creative? But those are the two ways I look at it. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing is for certain, and I think it's been certain for a while, the AI models are going to get better and better, right? I think, there is two sides of this equation. Some saying we are going to have AGI tomorrow. Others say, this whole thing is going to just fail over like in a week. The reality is somewhere in the middle. I think the reality is that there is a lot of room to optimize how the AI models work. So they're going to go get smarter and smarter. Sure, there might be periods of like a month or two or three, which is like a very short period uh, of not much growth. But then you will have announcements like DeepSeek that get people to realize, you know what, things are going to get smarter. Now, the big question I think, I guess, is worth for you and I to discuss is what does that mean for people leaders? What does that mean for skills? What does that mean for organizations? If I'm a head of L&D or a CLO at a company, I'm looking at this space and thinking, what skills matter in this world when the AI models are going to get better and better. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, it's a hot topic. I mean, skills itself, as you mentioned as part of the introduction, it's critical. And then there's the skills associated to how to work with, not for ideally, but how to work with AI and all the varied siblings of AI, whether it's large language models or GPTs or agents and so forth. And then, interestingly, there's the skills that we need to be aware that AI in itself needs to build. And at some point, we are thinking about AGI in the future. Is AI going to have, human-like or human-like times 1,000 characteristics or attributes? That'll be really interesting. I think putting ourselves in the shoes or the lens of HR leaders and talent leaders and L&D leaders, and then thinking about skills, which is so core to I know the Code Signal platform and strategy. The way I kind of look at it is, and thinking about AI and many humans is still having a hard time with defining just what is a skill. So
Mm-hmm.
by that I mean a skill typically is very, very um, qualitative. By that I mean people can have a different definition in terms of what is, project management and what are project management related skills. It differs
Mm-hmm.
if you're working for Pepsi or making Doritos or whatever it might be on
Mm-hmm.
that kind of assembly line of what a project management skills should be or have. And then there's something else if you're working for a pharmaceutical company and you're working on a clinical line assembling medicines. Project management skill definitions are going to be a little different. So the
Mm-hmm.
skill piece, thinking about it from an AI lens, I think, Tigran, is one where because the definitions are still, frankly, up to an individual's interpretation to a certain degree, but what's most
Mm-hmm.
important are the use cases that surround that particular skill. I gave project management an example, but from two radically different, I think, radically different use cases.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's a lot of other aspects where I think, again, looking at it from the lens of both AI and what this means to the leaders who are perhaps on this call, it's really, really interesting because the way I've been thinking about it is, what is it that you concretely measure in terms of accomplishment of X, a behavior, a skill, a duty to benefit the business? And that's really more at the task level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tasks are more binary. It was either successfully completed or not. You can't
Mm-hmm.
always say that about a skill. And
Mm-hmm.
clearly, there's a lot of grayness here. I totally recognize that. But that's something I've just been thinking a lot about. Again, looking at it from the lens of so many thoughtful HR leaders that are trying to build, a skills-based organization, which is awesome, which is priority. But you have to remember to have that engine, that skills-based organizational engine working, the fuel, in my opinion, that really, really makes it tick, it's at the
Uh-huh.
task level. What is
Yeah.
specifically being done that AI can interpret that's going to show some empirical evidence, so to speak, of application to the job. And
Mm-hmm.
if the application also means benefiting the worker's happiness and performance and career success, absolutely.
Yep. I think that's amazing because, like, most people talk about skills as if they are keywords taken off of resumes or job descriptions, right? And to your point, you need some way to package that conversation to have
Yeah,
a unit that you're talking about that makes sense, that people can have a shared reference of, such as tasks. Because you said project management. I mean, that could technically be a job. It encompasses the project manager's job. So is it a job or is it a skill? Right now, when you go one level down and say, what tasks do you have to accomplish to be a project manager or do project management, then in that realm, you can say, okay, well, to accomplish these tasks, what kind of skills do you need? And the other part to it is that if you define it as a task, you can actually start to talk about what does it take to assess whether someone can do this or has the skills to do it.
exactly.
Because you
Exactly.
can give them the task, you can simulate the task and say, can you do it? Can you not? And then conversely, you can say, well, I want you to get better at doing this job. What does the job take? What are the tasks you have to do? And then back from that to, okay, here it is, practice and build the skills necessary to do the tasks that go into the job.
Yeah, there's that certain level of mastery. I mean, we can slip in proficiency levels into the conversation as well. But it is interesting because just because a particular job
Mhm.
has 6 fundamental skills, and the more complicated skills, complicated meaning it takes a higher proficiency to get 1, 2, and 3 skills done,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you executed the task correctly. And so my point is that's why there's this marriage. There's this complement of, the beautiful container, for lack of better words, of skills to be accomplished and ideally
Mhm.
skills to be executed on one's job. They
Mhm.
should roll up in this hierarchy to a quote unquote skill. Some people call it
Mhm.
competencies. The next level up are competency models, or on the skills side is taxonomies.
Mhm.
Behind the scenes in the skills kitchen, there's the ontology that's doing all the quantitative measurement and so forth. But I think as an industry, my hope is that we kind of remove some of the semantics and ambiguity of these definitions and then look at how, in this context of the chat, I think, Tigran, how is AI most optimized to benefit workers? When we're talking about skills and we're talking about the systems and the structures, um, it's really, I think, let's get that task right. Those 8 things that proves that this skill has been wonderfully attained, and then
Mhm.
see where your LLM, see where your task management tools, see what your basic LMS and LXPs, learning experience platforms, learning management systems, see what they best most effectively track, and just start there. Don't get caught
Mhm.
up with all the semantics because I think we're really really built up with that. Even talking about skills-based organizations, which is awesome. But then again, you talk to 5 different HR or talent and L&D leaders, they might have their own,
Right.
certain definition of what an SBO is.
Right. 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 Well, I guess the biggest question, though, still remains: what tasks would humans be doing in the age of AI? Because I think the debate around uh, what skills we need to have, you're right, it's hard to say, but then we can bring it to the task world and say, what tasks are we going to be expected to be doing in this age, which will hopefully dictate what skills are most important, especially at the organizational level.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. That's a really good question. I mean, I guess up front, so say it's a year from now or something like that,
Mhm.
and say that we have a much more concrete understanding of where does AI like to play better, tasks or
Mhm.
skills.
Mhm.
And based on the gap, the delta, what's left over for humanity?
Mhm.
What's the remaining stuff that humans should be having and focusing on at the skill level and the task level? I know your question is more at the task level, which is super intriguing. I think at the skill level, right? How are you thinking about, decision making? How are you thinking about critical thinking? How are you thinking about still creativity? Even though I think AI can help with the creative process,
Right.
but at the task level, I think it's really around judgment.
Mm.
How do you ensure that via critical thinking or whatever that you are interpreting an output or an answer or a solution, whatever, correctly, whether it's from AI or from your human team or this hybrid augmented. That's one thing. It's, how do you actually rationalize and validate and verify in your own common sense whether or not something is truly
Mhm.
legit, for lack of better words?
Mhm.
What are those legitimate tasks? I think we can probably break that down, but I think it's something around that decision making and the judgment. And I think because of
Mhm.
the whole reasoning aspects, and DeepSeek R1 is a really, really good example in terms of its reasoning. I think that's profound. I'm just not sure yet
Mhm.
whether or not it's actually making the right judgment. And
Mhm.
so if we
Mhm.
can skinny down those tasks for judgment, I think that'll be really, really interesting. The other thing really, really quick is I've been thinking, so I've got two wonderful sons. I don't know if you know how big your family might be and so forth, but just watching my kids and how they respond to all the social media stuff, and should we not have given them a mobile phone when they were 14 and all this kind of stuff? I get it. But I think it's so interesting in the sense of, we've got so much information coming to us, Tigran, that at
Mhm.
some point, is it all just becoming one big, innocuous, gray, cloudy vacuum of lack of attention? You're
Mhm.
constantly derailed to thinking about this. I kind of observe my kids and I observe myself as best as I can. So
Mhm.
getting back to your question, sorry for the long answer, but I've been thinking a lot about the skill or the skills related to attention.
Mhm.
Are you paying attention? And it's more than
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
focus. Are you
Yeah.
assimilating correctly and reasonably what is it that you're paying attention to?
Yep.
And that is another, I think, task in terms of decision making and judgment that might be beneficial.
Here's a maybe slightly controversial take, and I'm curious what you think about it. I think in the AI future, everybody is going to be a leader, not a people leader, an AI leader. And let me explain what I mean. Let's first kind of break down what does leadership management mean, right? Like when you're a manager, what are the tasks? Let's define it in form of tasks. In reality, every single job can be explained as you've got some input, you start somewhere, right? And your job is to perform a certain set of tasks on that input and to get certain output. When you are a leader and a manager, people manager in the traditional sense, depending on the role, let's say you are a sales leader, right?
Yeah.
As a sales leader, you take a product, that's an input, right? You're not, sales teams don't build products. They take an existing product or a service and perform a set of tasks, such as organizing their teams, setting quotas, helping pitch, practice, all these different tasks to produce revenue. Input is product, output is revenue, and the tasks involved include everything from managing humans, organizing them, setting quotas, running daily stand-ups, etc., etc., etc. Now, do leaders and managers say, oh, you know what, I'm going to be obsolete if I hire more people into my team? Not really. You're just going to get better and be able to achieve more with the same input. And I think what humans are not realizing is the same thing is going to happen with AI. You're essentially getting unlimited workforce when you have AI at your disposal. And what you can achieve when you have all that intelligence and smart agents, call them, working with you is just incredible. Now, you remove one task that regular leaders have to do, which is people management,
Yeah.
which in many cases requires skill of understanding human psychology that many leaders unfortunately don't. But you can eliminate that piece. But being able to organize the work, being able to have a vision of what needs to be done, being able to have a strategy of what needs to be done, being able to actually understand what good looks like, right? This is another task for great leaders. Can you understand what good looks like? So when somebody doesn't do it well, you can say, you know what, you're not doing it well. So even though you're not doing it yourself, you know what good looks like. And to me, the future of AI is we're all going to be AI leaders, building, creating much better and bigger output than we could have ever dreamed of as a species, as humanity. What do you think? Am I completely off here, or is that right? I've never shared this because I've been wondering the same question. I've got two kids too, and I wonder the same question of like, what are humans going to be doing when AI can do it all? And I don't think that's science fiction. And I'm curious if you think this is true or not true.
I think you're spot on. I do think there's 99% relevance and accuracy and validity in your ideal state.
Hmm.
I do think it's going to happen. Now, is it
Mhm.
all humans? Probably not.
Mhm.
Conversely, is it all AI agents?
Mhm.
Some of them could just be so trapped into their operational tasks, they don't need to talk to a dang human. right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're putting, the bottle cap on top of, Pepsi bottles, and it's got to be accurately done to the
Mm-hmm.
to the very, very smallest, sense of error rate. There you go. How much
There you
later now
go.
you need the human maybe to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that the machinery is properly lubricated and operating well and yada yada. Maybe the bottle cap size changes. I don't know. That's a little bit on left field. I do think your point is just really, really spot on, particularly since there's like this, new level, so to speak, of what's the highest ranking AI
Mm-hmm.
agent? It's supposedly the orchestrator,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the master agent that
Mm-hmm.
is responsible for the 4 or the 45 or the 400 or the 4,000 other agents that are very doing their tasks. But somebody's got to like
Mm-hmm.
orchestrate that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think and thinking about like a musical conductor, an
Mm-hmm.
orchestrator,
Mm-hmm.
is orchestration a leadership attribute? I think it is, particularly if you're managing in a very matrixed um, organizational environment, or you have a variety of cross-functional sponsors who are constantly in conflict, yet you're stuck in the middle.
Right.
I think the leaders, humans as leaders, as orchestrators, is definitely going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because and it's not about the orchestrator or the AI agents not having enough autonomy to kind of do their own thing. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen as long as the work is predictable and it's
Mm-hmm.
measurable and it's quantitative, so to speak, and qualitative to a certain degree. There's still going to be that opportunity for that form of leadership, I think, to happen. Then there's the other forms of leadership that you might be implying as well. Visionary, thoughtfulness, operation minded, yet still creative, ideally. Dot 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 dot. Absolutely. I think the other way to kind of look at your ideal state, which I think is going to be an absolute practical state, is you know the earlier we can kind of get on board on what AI can do for you, then I
Mm-hmm.
think you're going to have a much better understanding of how to take advantage of that as a leader. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
whatever C level, VP level, E level you are, there's always a certain percentage of operational tasks you got to do,
Right.
but you're actually getting paid on the other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you really, at some point, if you're really going to provide a return based on your
Right.
salary at that level, heck
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your boss and your peers are going to say, Mark, Tigran, please use these agents to get rid of all that tactical stuff. We want
Right.
all of brilliant you. We don't want the worker bee with gloves on you. That's awesome. Great
Right.
glove.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it also depends on how we're defining leadership, but I totally agree.
Yeah, I guess it's funny. There's the fallacy. It exists in people leadership and human leadership currently too, where as people managers, sometimes people claim that you don't really need to know how to do the job. You just need to know how to manage people, which is still wrong. And if you've ever been, and I'm sure all of us have been managed by a leader who doesn't know how to do the job that you're doing, you know how it goes wrong, right? From just getting wrong direction to getting wrong feedback to sometimes getting no direction at all because they just don't understand what on earth that you're doing. I think we're somehow falling into that same trap with AI where it's very tempting, especially for the younger generation, to say, well, AI is going to do it all. I don't need to know what they're doing. I just need to tell them what to do. And we all know how it ends with human managers, right? When they just tell you what to do with the utter confidence and they have no idea what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
We can't fall into that trap, right? So what I'm getting at is I think it's very going to be very tempting to say we're just going to be very creative and sophisticated leaders and the AI will do it all for us. I think you're going to end up with some really bad AI managers and some really great ones who actually know what the AIs are doing. So to me, the hard skills are going to continue to matter as much. Maybe you won't be doing it, right? Like, let's say you know how to sell. Most likely, as a manager, not going to do that much hands-on selling, but understanding what they're doing is going to be important to give that direction. You know how to code. You might not write that much hands-on code,
Yeah.
right? But engineering managers who can code, who haven't lost that ability, are so much better as leaders. And I think the same exact thing is going to go apply to AI. Like even today, you want a data query, right? To talk to a database. Sure, you can go tell ChatGPT or DeepSeek, give me the query to do this. You'll get something back. If you can't tell what you got back is at least makes reasonable sense or not, you can get completely the wrong data and not even know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy, we are in some interesting times. One thing that I really, really believe in that you said, and you didn't use these words, but maybe you were too polite in front of all these wonderful guests.
Go for it. Go for it. Let's hear it.
It's the one thing that, so yes, absolutely. I think leaders just might not take on that duty or that responsibility, and that could be leaders at the individual contributor level, or people managers. You're managing two teams, or a team of 20,000, whatever it might be. The thing that frightens me the most, that you're that I heard the most, is this whole aspect of, what's the term, metacognitive laziness.
Mm-hmm.
So where people are just becoming lazy, which is
Mm-hmm.
worse than not doing something. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, AI is going to do it for me. Therefore, why should I critically think about anything? Why should I judge or interpret anything?
Mm-hmm.
Dot, 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 dot. And I get it, right? The thing that really bothers me, particularly putting on my learning and development hat, and thinking about skills and thinking about content and thinking about all that stuff that kind of makes a great worker a great worker, is we've kind of gotten to the point, and this is where a scary side of AI and L&D kind of scares me, is it's the last thing we want to do is build bulk training at scale
Mm-hmm.
to make a whole bunch of average workers.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing about bulk, AI works well if you're giving it an answer where the vast majority of its solution is bulk related. This might not work for
Mm-hmm.
two people, but this will definitely work for 20,000. And it's
Mm-hmm.
probably the level of accuracy is going to be so spot on. You're right, Mr. or Miss
Right.
AI. It ain't going to work for two. 20,000, yeah. At some point, the scale or the bulk is going to derive into something that many companies are going to see as profitable. And
Mm-hmm.
that scares the X out of me, because not the Twitter out of me, but anyway, that scares other stuff, in the sense that we can't make bulk learners. We can't make
Mm-hmm.
people that are not thinking about complicated thinking and thinking about rational decision making and so forth. So this probability of building a lazy workforce, it really bugs the heck out of me, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping that aspect is not going to come true.
Yeah. I mean, like first, obviously, like that idea of bulk learning, right? I think if you look at a existing learning content, it's so focused on passive learning, where we've basically just taken what used to happen in the classroom, which we know barely works, and put it online and say, okay, this will 100% work. And I mean, in many cases, we got through university and we got through it because we suffered at least with other people who were suffering through it with us. And then you
Yeah,
put it online, you remove the camaraderie aspect, you just leave the suffering in place, and you hope that it's actually going to lead to skills development, which it doesn't, right? So that's that. But when it comes to the laziness comment you've mentioned, I mean, I'd I'd like to believe that humans naturally have a lot of curiosity and a desire to do something, but they need the motivation and the why and the leadership around understanding that it matters.
yeah,
Because while we have a lot of natural curiosity and tendency to want to do things and self actualize, we are also biologically designed to be an energy conservation mission, right? And you got to realize when we've evolved, just like every other animal out there, energy was scarce, food was scarce, which meant that if you could conserve energy by laying around and doing nothing, that's probably the right move, unless your, survival is being threatened. Now, in the case of humans, though, you have to balance those two things. And if we go out there, and a lot of AI hypers do go out there and say, you know what, human learning is dead. Why do we need to learn anything anymore? Obviously, you're going to get a lot of humans who say, oh, they're right. We're just not going to go learn anything and hope for the best. I think the reality is human learning is more important than ever. And that our learning systems need to be designed with that idea in mind, that A, it's more important than ever. B, what we need to know, what we need to learn is likely going to change faster than it has ever done before.
Yeah,
Which
the
means
good old
continuous
skill
learning.
shelf life.
Exactly, right? And which means continuous learning is even more important than ever. So I think we have to really wake up and stop treating learning as if it's a nice to have or something that like we can survive without, and think of it as, if we, especially organizations, right? If you don't take learning, development, skills gaps closing as like a strategic priority or even a risk to the organization, most likely you're going to be dramatically outpaced by your competitors.
Yes, sir.
We've got some questions coming in. I want to toss some of them your way and see what you think. All right,
Yeah, let
let's
me
see.
just get really quick response. I think you're, again, really spot on, and we need to get to these questions. Absolutely. Just really briefly. I think with or without AI, I think particularly in the workforce development world, the amount of knowledge that was expected for the human worker brain to have 20 years ago is different than the amount of knowledge that today's human worker should have. By that I mean, I think learning is becoming more sophisticated, where there's differentiation between the stuff that you need to know to build mastery, to build deeper skills, versus the stuff that you just need to know how to do.
Right.
Which might not be knowledge related.
Right.
And I think the smarter learning systems, and I think some of the smarter AI tools are really starting to understand and bake themselves into the actual flow of work, where if someone has a 17-step thing to do and everybody gets stuck on step 9, well, just show me how to do step 9 better. Yep. Don't give me all the contextual abstract skilling related to why only masters do step 9 well. No, just tell me the 5 things that I'm doing wrong on step 9 or whatever it might be.
Right.
And by the way, it's okay for me to forget those 5 things. Yeah. Because at some point it will become rote to a certain degree. But again, today's modern brain it can only go so big and wide and deep. But anyway, I think there's a distinction between learning stuff in the moment to get a task completed versus learning stuff with longevity to really build your career, to really build your artistry as a profession or professional, whatever that might be. Let's get to some questions.
And I was going to say, learning things for the long haul means doing it hands-on, right? Because people do not really learn. I mean, the best example that I always give is, like, imagine if somebody tried to teach you how to ride a bike by showing you a video of somebody else riding it, and then said,
or even a darn good AR simulation.
Darn good AR simulation, right? You got to get on the bike. You got to get on the bike. You got to fall off of it a couple of times, and then you start to get that idea. And for physical skills, I think humans very easily understand that. Somehow, when it comes to knowledge-related skills, knowledge work, we assume that you could just show somebody how to do something, and they got it.
Yeah, I think really quick, I'm glad there are 3 traditional things in adult learning or pedagogical instructional design that are everlasting. To your point, practice, something related to retention, and something related to reflection. I don't think AI and all its master Wizard of Oz magic is going to come out from behind the curtain and never tell you those 3 are wrong.
Yeah,
they're everlasting.
If anything, AI, for the first time ever, has made it possible for us to practice work relevant skills in a
Exactly.
realistic environment because you couldn't do that before. Like you could practice coding before by sitting in your house. That's why you've got a lot of self-taught engineers who just like sit in the house and write code because they had the simulation at their disposal. They didn't have the feedback, they had Stack Overflow and other places. But now with AI, you can practice how to be a better leader by practicing talking to an AI. You can practice how to be a better salesperson. You can practice how to be a better marketer. It wasn't possible before. And you can have AI actually give you feedback. You can finally solve Bloom's Two Sigma problem, which said that one-on-one tutoring produces 2 standard deviations above educational outcomes. And only the very wealthy could afford one-on-one tutors for the longest time. So I think we tend to focus a lot on the like, oh my God, AI is changing everything. Things are like, so fast, going to take our jobs. We forget that learning is more important than ever. And AI has made it possible for us to really have truly world-class education for very little money accessible to everyone.
Especially in the right context, with the right
Hmm.
use cases and scenarios that the learner probably has no access to, but AI does have the data to build that for the individual. All right, where do you want to
All
start
right,
with these
let's do
questions?
questions. All right, let's start from learning in 5 years. All right, if you think about organizations and L&D teams, I know that you've run L&D organizations for many years, but if you're not doing it right now, but if you were, like, how would you think about, making your organization successful from L&D perspective 5 years from now?
The first thing to come to my head is no one knows what the heck's going to happen in 3 years, let alone 5 years. The
Right?
one leadership attribute or skill, it's agility, and that sounds kind of
Hmm.
straightforward, but that's really it. How are you dealing with change? I mean, literal change. What are you seeing and what are you forecasting and what are you predicting? I'm sorry, what are you forecasting and what are you predicting in terms of something right around the corner? What's the trigger that's going to say there's a higher level of probability? Then what's your plan Bs to
Hmm.
experiment? But all this I put under the agility or the adaptability bucket, and it's not just L&D, but it's obviously anyone on the people side, but the same thing on the technology side. If you're on the manufacturing line or if you're a salesperson or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. I like to say that there's only one constant, that is change, and that change is only getting faster. So I think you're absolutely right that if there is one thing that you want to focus on is agility. Well, we've got another question that's relevant. How about measure of success, right? How can L&D organizations think about what does measure of success look like in the AI age for both the individual, the employee, as well as the organization?
Yeah, and please add on too. This is a really great question. The way, in a very simplistic way, I think a lot of AI teams, successful AI teams, and not,
Mhm.
but for lack of better descriptors, have been so fascinated with utilization and consumption numbers. How many
Mhm.
people attended this course? How many hours were provisioned? How many hours were completed? How many completions led to certifications? What percentage of our staff is certified on blah blah? That's all kind of in
Mhm.
this consumption completion
Mhm.
bucket. I think a lot of systems and tools, whether it's on the LMS side or the HCM side, whatever, human capital management side, they're getting a lot smarter about understanding how to track consumption. I think what's going to be most important is understanding the activity or the
Mhm.
experience, and what
Mhm.
does that look like as a measurable, and how is that actually going to be measured, particularly when you look at it from an employee experience perspective, for which I'd put learning as a subset of employee experience, right?
Mhm.
Because you have the social experience, you have the work experience, and you have the organizational experience. And I'm
Mhm.
hopeful that measurements are going to be tapping more into those experience layers other than just consumption and utilization and butts and seats, as some people call it.
Yeah, I love that you've mentioned that one because it reminded me of a funny incident that happened where I was talking to, I won't get specific because otherwise it might become clear what I'm saying, but they were talking about the learning metrics being used and provided by some of the L&D vendors, and every single one was consumption, but we found so many different ways to represent consumption that it sounds fancy, right? So you're like, oh, we've got hundreds of metrics, and then you go through them. It's like, well, minutes consumed per day, courses consumed per hour, like how many lessons did you watch in a 7-day window? It's basically like just massage consumption in every possible way you can. But then people are not asking, so what, right? Has it
Yeah.
led to skills to complete tasks we care about? If it hasn't, we haven't accomplished anything.
Just to be clear, I don't mind consumption. In
Sure,
many
me neither.
cases, leaders, the people that are paying for your salary, that's all they want to see is I just want to get a general understanding. Don't give me all your L&D, instructional design, pedagogical, art and science stuff. Just tell me, did a lot of people show up? And then who are those people? And let me talk to their boss, right? I mean,
Right.
the thing that I like about what you described is if you can triangulate those multiple consumption metrics to further validate something has been applied at work, that's the sweet spot.
Yep.
Because you shouldn't, in corporate learning, workforce learning, if you're not applying what you learned, then that percentage of the course that you took that is not applied to your job, that's called scrap. That percentage of scrap, that is a cost behind it.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with the extra stuff if it provides the right context and all that. I get it. But at some point, if you can give me that triangulation of data that shows, yes, Mark, Johnny, Claire, Tigran, they applied what they learned, and that application is tracked in the CRM and the ERP, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, but application is so much harder to measure because it happens on the job, and unless you kind of bring very heavy supervision, which nobody is going to want, it's going to be hard. But I think
AI, your friendly AI is getting there.
The friendly AI is watching you. No, I don't think people are going to like that. But I think there is an in between, which is, have you mastered the skills necessary to do the task? Because if you haven't, then obviously you're not going to go apply it on the job. If you at least have, there is, and those skills are relevant to the tasks on your job, there's a high chance that you will actually go ahead and apply it on the job.
Well, so this is a hot topic, right? There's a difference between correlation and causation. My point is, I think even in modern day, not so heavy AI tools can still show application to a high level. Really, really quick. If I'm a salesperson and I'm learning how to negotiate with financial services companies, and my negotiation is associated to phase 3 out of the 5-phase sales methodology, the CRM is measuring all the stuff that's happening in phase 3 at the task level. And there's going to be a higher probability if you can triangulate data that says, yes, Mark visited 10 financial services, large banks in the past quarter, all brand new for his account. And you know what? After he took this course, XYZ happened 3x more so than others that did not take that course. That's still correlation. But if you can start to triangulate that within the CRM and then other pieces, if I'm the sales boss, I'm going, give me a heck of a lot more of that training, please.
Right. All right. Well, we've got 1 minute. I want to end on a positive note. Let's both take like 30 seconds and maybe share about what are you most optimistic about in the next few years?
Whether it's AI or not, what I'm most optimistic about is humans getting a better appreciation of humanity. I think because we have all these wondrous and scary disturbances across the board, political, macroeconomics, technology, literal economics. My sense is, and my hope is, people are going to have a much better appreciation of people. Where ideally this whole thing is going to get reversed a little bit. Whether it's a political decision, whether it's an economic decision, whether it's a social, cultural decision, I'm just hopeful that people are going to say, okay, how is this impacting humans and human survival and human happiness? And I'm hoping that's where we're headed.
Absolutely. And I think my optimism, it comes from that, like, you know, I think we've always wanted to do a lot and accomplish a lot and solve a lot of problems and the list of problems is not going to get any smaller, but I think we finally, all of us, have the tools and the capacity to do it because AI is going to help us learn whatever we want to learn and at whatever age and whatever time and at whatever cost we want to learn it. And it's going to give us the ability to go create and solve problems and build things faster than we could ever done before. So I'm super optimistic, and I think 10 years from now we're going to be living in a future that, looking back to today, is going to be like, wow, remember when things used to be really hard? That was just 10 years ago. Marc, thank you so much for featuring on the webinar. Fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing you in San Diego in a couple of months for ASU GSP.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tigran and team, and Chelsea behind the scenes. Really appreciate the invite and really, really great chat. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.